Now, I want to get your thoughts on something. So you've been living in a place for years and years, and you know the people in the area very well and the religion they practice. And then a new place of worship, a mosque, a church, a mandir, a gurdwara pops up, a synagogue. How would you react? I'd really like you to share your viewpoints on that, because there's been controversy in North London over an Islamic centre, and it's moved into an area with a large Jewish community. Some residents aren't happy, and they've enlisted the help of a man who calls himself the Mosque Buster to try and oppose this centre. To find out more, listen to this report from our reporter Nalini Sifathasan.
Golders Green's got some new neighbours. That's a sermon being held at the Husseiniat Al Rasul Al Adam Islamic Centre. It's an iconic venue known to locals as the Hippodrome and can hold thousands of people. The new owners are Shia Muslims who moved in a few months ago.
We're proposing for 2 points: the change of word from church to place of worship. The hours are from 8:30 a.m. till around 11:30 p.m. We want them to extend the hour some nights by 1 hour.
That's Ahmed Al-Kazemi talking about the centre's planning application to Barnet Council. He didn't realise it would be so controversial.
I'm surprised by the opposition, by the views, by the comments of people who haven't met us.
More than 5,000 people signed a petition against the plans.
My name is Gavin Bobby. You might have heard of the Law and Freedom Foundation. Some people refer to me as the Mosque Buster.
That's a video taken by a community group called Golders Green Together. They invited Mr Bobby, who's based in Bristol, to come to Golders Green and speak at a meeting in October. He talked about his experience opposing mosques and Muslim centres, and he told people to complain about traffic, pollution and overcrowding, and to check if the centre was breaking the law or conditions of use. But some say he soon began using offensive language.
Islamic doctrine is very clear in its calls for war, massacre, rape and murder.
The group Golders Green Together, who invited Mr Bobby to the discussion, said it was a very equitable meeting. They say they want the venue to be used by different communities in the area, not just by Muslims. Gavin Bobby didn't want to speak to us, but journalist Spike Johnson says his words sound familiar.
That was the type of things that he was saying on the phone with me.
Spike used to cover far-right groups and found Mr Bobby through the English Defence League, a group which has been described as anti-Muslim. Since then, Mr Bobby's cut ties with the group, but Spike says it was a different story 5 years ago, when he went undercover and briefly worked with him.
He was advertising on the EDL website, and the EDL marches were handing out Mosque Buster flyers, right? He was publicly a supporter of them. It was mutual, they were supporting each other.
Back in Golders Green, there's strong reaction to the Islamic Centre.
It's shocking, and I don't know why it has to be here.
It's the Jewish area, and the large mosque, well, it's something that shouldn't happen in this area.
These Jewish women that have come round want you to sign a petition, but I just signed it because I'm Jewish.
Barnet Council say they'll reach a decision on the application in the new year.
So joining me to discuss more about this, that report there from Nalini, is Judge Khurshid Drabu, who's an advisor to the Mosques and Imams National Advisory Board. Salman Farsi now works for the Labour Party, but until recently was a press officer for the East London Mosque Trust. I've got Laura Marks, an entrepreneur and founder of Mitzvah Day, a day of interfaith social action, and Arifur Rahman, who's a secular humanist blogger. Let me start with you, Judge Khurshid Drabu. This place is called an Islamic centre. I don't believe it's being referred to as a mosque. What's the difference?
All places of worship that are used by Shiite Muslims are called Islamic centers. They are not called mosques. It matters not what they're called, but that is a place for worship to Allah. Right?
Yeah.
Now, I have listened very carefully to what was being said. It is shocking that one individual is being allowed to spout nothing but hatred against Muslims.
And this is Gavin Bobby you're talking about, the so-called self-described Mosque Buster.
That's right. I mean, his name gives it away. Mosque Buster. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's a name he's given to himself, I should add, yeah.
Yes. it is ridiculous to suggest that he is acting in good faith. He is not acting in good faith. I mean, to call any area a Jewish area or a Muslim area is fallacious. There are no such areas in Britain. We live in a multicultural society, in a democratic country where people have the right to make objections about planning applications and so many other things. But we must use that power or that right in a constructive manner.
So you've got no problem with him being opposed to the mosque? You don't feel he's doing it the right way?
He is not doing it the right way. I have no problem with him lending his services to whoever wants to use him. But I would respectfully request people to ensure that they don't get entangled in litigation and hate crimes. This man has identified certain areas in which people can make objections to building of mosques.
Okay.
And they are perfectly legitimate, that there might be more traffic and this and that. But the underlying theme appears to be, we don't want Muslims in this country, and we don't want Muslims to have places of worship in this country because they are not good for the society. Which world is he living in?
Well, can I just say, we couldn't get Gavin Bobby on the show. We did ask him, so he's not here to fully defend all the comments that he's made. I want to go to Salman in a moment, but just quickly, Judge Kershaw, do you think the mosque should go ahead? And why? Why do you think the mosque is needed, or the Islamic Centre? Can you hear me? Oh, I think we might have lost him. Let me bring Salman Farsi into this. Salman, why is this Islamic Centre needed?
I think if there's a need for it in the area and the Muslim community there need a place of worship, then, why should they not have that space? The Hippodrome has been unused for a very long time. And if the community there can build and make something out of that venue and space, whether it be an Islamic centre, you have to remember that it won't just serve Muslims. It will also provide a venue for non-Muslims to come and engage with Muslims at a time of such distrust and misconceptions about Islam and Muslims. I think
so the Islamic centre would be open to everybody?
Yes, absolutely. And just as the East London Mosque and London Muslim Centre just does not, it doesn't primarily serve just Muslims in East London. It's open to non-Muslims. Like some of the services there, 60% of the service users are non-Muslims. So it will provide a service to the greater community and provide a platform for engagement. So I can't see how in cosmopolitan London, how we can have such, debates about whether it should go ahead, whether it shouldn't go ahead.
Why do you think there is a debate? Why do you think?
It's there is a narrative being peddled, and you interviewed Mr. Gavin, and you heard.
We didn't interview him. There was just a clip of him in there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just some of his kind of public rhetoric, but there is a far-right narrative that is being peddled by individuals like the English Defence League, Britain First, etc., who want to cause divisions. They have come into this area, which a lot of Jewish individuals reside in, but that shouldn't make it a Jewish area. Similarly, Whitechapel in East London, just because a lot of Muslims reside there, doesn't mean it is a Muslim area. There's no such thing. There's no-go areas for particular different races, ethnicities, people from different creeds.
Okay.
And that's what makes London so diverse and unique.
Stay with me, Salman, because I want to come to my two guests in the studio, Laura Marks and Arifur Rahman. I'll come to you in a moment, Arifur, because I imagine you have a very different viewpoint on this. But Laura, first of all, we talk about a Jewish area in Golders Green. What's your viewpoint on that? And what is the feeling towards this Islamic centre by Jewish people there?
Well, Golders Green's sort of traditionally been an area that's got a very high Jewish population, and it still has. I think that actually we should be looking at this another way round, which is that as an area which is sort of predominantly Jewish, we actually should be welcoming these people, this centre, into our midst. Very unfortunately, increasingly society is divided into little silos, and each community, particularly particularly as things become politically more and more polarised, people are closing into their own little silos and sending their children to their own faith schools and hanging out with their own faith neighbours and getting to know their own faith people. And I think people are very anxious about reaching out to what they see as the other. And in a way, it's a golden opportunity having the Hippodrome. It's funny, when I was a child, we used to go there to see pantomimes. It's very much the heart of the Jewish community. But to have a group of Muslim people coming into our midst, or to the Jewish community's midst, should be a wonderful opportunity to make relationships, to reach out, to get to know each other. And so much of the hatred that we're seeing at the moment here in Britain and around the world is based on people not knowing each other. People just don't know each other.
And we see that a lot, don't we? We hear about that a lot. Jewish and Muslim, two groups who are supposedly not supposed to get on. Do you think having a centre would make a difference in that way?
Well, I think it has an opportunity to.
Right.
In fact, we have Mitzvah Day, which is an interfaith, a Jewish-led interfaith day, which was in November. We deliberately reached out to the mosque, to the Islamic Centre, and asked the people to come and join us. And a group of young people from the new centre came and gave blood at a local synagogue. And I can't think of anything more symbolic and more positive, actually, than coming along to the synagogue to give your blood, because that says everything.
Yeah. And Salman there agreeing with you. I wanted to bring you into it, Arif. What's your viewpoint on having something like this Islamic Centre?
Well, I was quite amused by the other gentleman on the phone when he was using the word multiculturalism, cosmopolitan. And it suits to use those words when it's needed, but then when Islam comes in, the cosmopolitanness goes away. And
in what way?
Well,
I don't agree with that.
Islam has got this way of kind of saying that we don't like these sort of things. For example, in a cosmopolitan definition, when you hear the term, you hear people, having a good time, probably nightclubs and bars and things, which is completely, out of the way. So if you say that other groups are welcomed in this, and if it's suddenly a secular group,
let me just say for the record.
Salman, let Arif finish his point, Salman, if that's okay. Sorry.
If a secular group suddenly says that, okay, we're going to have a party in this community centre, and probably there's going to be alcohol involved, people are going to have a sip of drinks or something, I don't think that's going to be allowed in that community centre, even if it is from a different faith, even if it is Hindu or Christian or Jewish.
But that's okay, isn't it? Not everyone drinks alcohol.
Well, I'm saying, is it going to be permitted by the authorities of that Islamic Centre, saying that, knowing that
clearly not, because it will still be a religious venue. It will have its own kind of sets
so
of
that's
rules
where the divisions comes in, and
but
also
that doesn't mean that within that community, suddenly, because of mosque being there, suddenly Muslims are going to start opposing pubs and nightclubs. Let me just say, I wanted to
just
add
quickly wrap up, because I do want Arif just to get his point.
I was making one other point, is that also it was mentioned that the division is actually created by the EDL and all those things, but then we see Islamist extremist groups actually violently and openly say very non-British things, and they oppose dead soldiers coming back from,
Not all Muslims, come on.
Well, there are groups. I'm not saying all Muslims. There is a division between the word Islam and the word Muslim, because Muslims are also actually a part of are humans. But then Islam is an ideology. But when we blend them two together and use interchangeably, that causes a lot of problem. And that is the core of this problem we see here, the hatred. People have issues when ISIS beheads people openly in the name of Islam. And then in here, because there is no good narrative or clear narrative about that, a Muslim subscribing to the ideology of Islam, maybe it's moderate, maybe it's Sunni, maybe it's Salafi, maybe it's Shia, they don't necessarily subscribe to the ideologies of ISIS, but then the narrative, the media is not actually doing a good job. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this, why there is this opposition, but also these Islamic centers themselves don't really have a good track record of, because we have seen evidence of these centers having schools of like an out of hour schools where children are regularly physically punished. I think it stopped recently, but it used to be that reading Quran and if you don't know, they're physically abused, and there has been evidence of those things, and unregulated, activities were going on.
I don't know exactly, we can't go into all the evidence and stuff, but look, your viewpoint is not one that I'm not surprised by, because you're a secularist.
Yeah, we want people to have a, non-religious, a humanist view of
Would you feel like this if I was talking to you about planning a church?
Where?
If we weren't talking about a mosque or an Islamic centre, and I said, look, that people want to build a church.
Do the churches have a track record of these similar activities in the UK? I would ask that question.
Well, I'm sure that, you will hear a lot about Catholic churches, for example, and what have you, carrying out the kinds of abuses that you've been talking about.
But that maybe a few hundred years ago, but not recently.
Well, I'm sure that's not true.
I think there's a different way of looking at this, which is that obviously there are extreme people within any community, and but I'm a firm believer that the vast majority
the Muslims
of people, the vast majority of people want safe, local, cohesive communities where they live, where they bring up their children, where they educate people, where they get jobs.
Human rather than part of the religious
identities. I think that most people, even if they have a religious background, I have a religious background, most of us believe in local safe communities, and that's about getting on with our neighbours, and that's about opening doors, that's about understanding each other. It's about, we're setting up actually in Golders Green a Nisa Nashim group, which is, it means women in Arabic and Hebrew, and the idea is to bring some of the hatred down by educating one another about each other. And we can start off with the point that most people are awful and dangerous, and what I much prefer to do is start off with the belief that most people are good, and most people want good things for their family and for their communities and for their lives, and that the only way to do that is, as ordinary people living in these communities, the only way to do that is to do it ourselves and to reach out to our neighbours. And so what Mitzvah Day does and what Nisa Nashim does, both in different ways, but we are about encouraging people to sit down together, to learn about each other, to enjoy each other, to celebrate each other's festivals, to understand why do Muslim people not drink alcohol? Rather than that being a problem, let's understand it. Oh, that's interesting. Jewish people don't eat pork. Oh, well, that's interesting. So nor do Muslims. So you find points of similarity at the same time as you find points of difference.
And you don't disagree with that, Arifur?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When people find common ground between faith and actually keeping the faith on the side, rather than becoming a human, general citizen of Britain, rather than worrying about, I am this religion and I have to kind of hold these things on my shoulder quite heavily. There is no need.
So actually you agree with what Laura's saying, but you think you don't need the faith to bring people together?
There is no need, because Britain is becoming a secular nation. Around 53% people here already say that we don't really worry about religion or faith. So it's a majority, getting a lot of majority. And
well, I would slightly dispute the figures with you on that one, but
let's say I didn't come up with it.
Let's say that half the people don't consider themselves part of a faith group. Nonetheless, half the people do, and it's very much part of people's beliefs about themselves. But even if you take religion out of it, we remain with the issue that people are in silos. People are not getting on with their neighbours. People are fearful of immigrants. People are fearful of people of different colour, different faiths, and actually that does none of us any service.
I'm just coming up to 12. I want you guys to stay here because I want to carry on talking about everything you've just said there. So do stay with me. It's just gone 12 o'clock. You're listening to The Big Debate. I've got with me Laura Marks. We're talking about this new mosque or Islamic centre that's being built, or there are plans to build it. Laura's here with me. I've also got Salman Farsi, who's on the line, and Arifur Rahman, a secular humanist blogger. We will talk more about this issue, but it's just gone 12 o'clock, so let's get the news with Anka Desai.
Asian Network's Big Debate.
Let's continue talking about this Islamic centre that's causing a bit of controversy in North London. I've got still with me Salman Farsi, who works for the Labour Party, who was a press officer for the East London Mosque Trust. I've got Laura Marks, an entrepreneur and founder of Mitzvah Day, a day of interfaith social action, also from Nisa Nashim, which is a group that connects Jewish and Muslim women together around the UK. And also Arifur Rahman, a secular humanist blogger. And I've got Judge Kershad Drabu, an advisor to the Mosques and Imams National Advisory Board, who I thought I'd lost but is still on the phone. If I can come to you again, Kershad, just a simple question, really. I want to know, do you think mosques and imams are making enough effort to engage with non-Muslims?
Very much so, very much so. And the engagement is beginning to show positive results. You only have to read the report published in Independent, and it is so refreshing to see that the project has received positive support from many Jewish residents in the area. That has only been possible because Muslims have understood and realized and are acting upon the concept, the principle of engaging with other faiths, other ethnicities, other national groups. I mean, we have got a very good project going on, supported by the Muslim Council of Britain, Visit My Mosque. And that project has been extremely successful. It invites people of other faiths into mosques to see how mosques are run, what we do in mosques. I mean, I find it absolutely amazing that a person who says that he represents or he believes in humanism should expect mosques or places of worship to serve alcohol. And if they don't, then they are not part of the British culture.
Well, I didn't say serve alcohol. I said if you expect an event, because you said that this venue is not only for Muslims, it's for others too. So if you give others an opportunity to come in and say we're going to organize an event here, there may be alcohol served, not by the mosque, but by the event organizers, would that be permitted? Would they be allowed to actually hold an event like that? If it is a community center, why not?
It wouldn't be. Why is alcohol an issue? I'm
saying the mosque will create an issue.
But is that a bad thing? I'm just trying to understand the alcohol point.
So there's all sorts of issues with this, and it really, a lot of it boils down to understanding and willingness to listen. So, for example, we launched a new Nisa Nashim group in Golders Green, and one of the Muslim women, brought along some lovely pastries. And of course, there's a tradition in Islam that it's a real privilege to bring a gift and to bring food, and people would be offended if people didn't try it. And on the other hand, there's a real tradition in the Jewish world that a lot of people follow the laws of kashrut. They won't eat it if it's not kosher. So immediately you've got a clashing of the cultures, or potential clashing of the cultures, where both groups thought that they were doing something lovely for the other group, and actually the potential for offence was huge. And what these women managed to do was to talk around it, to understand, oh, that was so lovely you brought it, but we can't eat it because we have these rules, and that's so interesting. But without the willingness to sit down together to discuss it, to understand each other's cultures, whether it's a religious or it's cultural, in a way is sort of not the nub of the problem. The problem is that there are people from different backgrounds with different beliefs and different rituals and different behavioural things that they do, different rules. And the inability to talk about it in the same way with the alcohol can lead to conflict
and bacon,
or it can lead to understanding, and we actually need to make it lead to understanding.
Well, understanding is good, but religion doesn't help because, for example, if we go in a restaurant with friends of mine, and a lot of them don't really can't really enjoy food. And if we are sharing, for example, a platter, that platter cannot have anything that ham and pork and anything that's smelling. That means we get to lose out on good food, because if it is a big platter that is shared, even if ham is on the side, they will not touch it, knowing that we can't order anything that has ham on it. It's a kind of...
Surely you have that kind of experience with a vegan or a vegetarian, or you've got Hindus as well, don't you?
Yeah.
So... And nowadays,
that's what I'm saying. Religion causes so much issues. It's not only Muslim.
It's not just religion, though, is it? That's what I'm saying, though. You've got people who are vegans, who nothing to do with religion. Just on the point of food, you could have those kind of, I've got a friend who's gluten intolerant.
Food is magnificently able to bring people together, and it's also magnificently able to tear people apart. We were talking about this the other day, is that with food, you think that, particularly Jewish and Muslim women, you think, food is the ideal way to bring people together. I went to an interfaith event a few years ago, and on the platter they had beef, they had prawns, they had butter with the beef, they had every possible taboo that came up with different faith groups. And I looked at this platter that somebody had lovingly put together, hoping and believing that she was going to make everybody...
Which nobody can eat, right?
And nobody can eat it. Like, not one group was happy.
There was this nice commercial that was put out by Australians. There was it was big hit in viral. It's talk about lamb, the meat we all can enjoy. Apparently that is not the only meat that everyone can eat, and it was quite funny. I mean, people should see it.
Is that the ad? There was a bit of controversy over.
Well, obviously Muslims will always have controversy, and I think this time it was the Hindus, because the Ganesh was being kind of mocked at. Because we should address the elephant in the room, and he said, no, it's not funny now. It wasn't funny 2,000 years ago.
Look, I mean, I just need to wrap up, but it's such a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, it's not a 10-minute discussion,
is it? It's not. We should get you on and talk for 3 hours maybe next time.
Well, I just think that the key thing I think about it is this idea that there are no-go areas in London is crazy.
Yeah.
We are all neighbours. We all have to get on. We're all facing, particularly the minority groups, whether you are a Jew or Muslim, somebody who's not white, somebody who's not we're all minorities, or we're all people who feel excluded from the mainstream. And actually, the job of all of us is to try to break down those barriers, because it's in all of our interest.
The barriers are the religion, because the humanists, as we would say.
But this is what I was going to say, in an Islamic centre or a religious place of worship is a way to do it. But Arif, for you, I mean, as a humanist, I guess you're generally opposed to any place of worship.
Well, if people want to go and worship, but because think about it, Muslims worship 5 times a day, and think about the number of people. And if you have to make a huge construction where everybody would come 5 times a day, that would be a huge security risk, because Ahmadiyya Muslim mosques are now being put in metal detectors because they fear. And then you have all these pollution issues, because so many cars comes in and there is no shuttle bus to a mosque, is there? And then, you have security concerns about people bombing and, all this. People can have a good one-to-one relationship with their God at home or wherever they want to. Why there is a need for a huge construction, and which is going to be 90% time empty?
The building's already there in this case, but I think that all hatred is only related to religion, it's not. It's related to colour, it's related to gender. In fact, as a Muslim woman, you're more likely to be attacked than a Muslim man, much more likely. So I think that to put the whole blame at the doors of religion is simplistic. I think that actually we live in a society where there are too many divisions based on all sorts of prejudices that we have, and actually we need to break down those prejudices.
Wait, did I get you both agreeing there?
Well,
yeah, you agreed, you nodded.
I did, yeah, because religion is just a tool used by, I would not go very conspiracy here, but who are those kind of highly vocal leaders of Muslim Islams who come up with controversial comments about which creates hatred among non-Muslims towards the Muslims.
Let me bring in Salman Farsi because he's still on the line and I've not come to him for a while, and I do need to wrap up. Salman, if I can just kind of end just with what you'd like to say, just picking up on the point, 2 points Arif made. Why do we need big places of worship to bring communities together, and also on the point about Muslim leaders making comments which aren't very conducive, I guess, to better cohesion, interaction and cohesion?
I think a lot has changed since the kind of first generation of kind of Muslim migrants, if you will, that came to Britain, and some of our forefathers. Things have changed a lot. I think this mosque provides a fantastic opportunity for different communities to interact. There will always be like little kind of areas where there might be tension, but the opportunity here for cohesion and to learn about other faiths, and for Muslim community to get along with Jewish communities is greater here than some of the arguments that I've heard. I think if you look at the empirical evidence from East London, for example, you can see the fantastic contributions made by the mosque and centre to the community there, the local community, and also the wider community in London. So I think, that's something that needs to be looked at and brought forth into the debate. When you are talking about, individuals, and I know someone was saying, you were saying about, some of the evening supplementary schools in particular parts of the country where, imams might have treated young people in a wrong way. That's absolutely wrong. And I think those issues are now, they have been dealt with. When it comes to issues of, Muslim communities standing against terrorism and extremism, etc., I can say, I've championed those kind of voices from our community. Sometimes I've paid the price for it when I've come up against people like Anjem Chowdhury. I've been physically attacked by them, and I don't have to do that, but I will do that because I can see a benefit in it for everyone.
It's really good talking to all of you. We are going to have to wrap up, but I'd love for us to chat about this again. I'm sure we will.
No, I think it was a good, nice discussion. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Arifur. That's Arifur Rahman there, who just spoke, secular humanist blogger. Also, Laura Marks, an entrepreneur, founder of Mitzvah Day. It's a day of interfaith social action. She's also the co-founder of Nisa Nashim, a group bringing Muslim and Jewish women together across the country. And Salman Farsi there on the phone, who works for the Labour Party but was a press officer for the East London Mosque Trust.